It's my first taste ever of Stagg Jr, so let's see what I think. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So that's right, today we've got a very exciting video for me, and hopefully for you too. It will be my first ever taste of Stagg Jr bourbon. Actually, caveat to that, it's just called Stagg because this is batch 18 where they dropped the junior because it's an all grown up adult now. It's 131 proof from Buffalo Trace Distillery, of course. This was a sample sent to me by James Street, big supporter of the channel, so thanks so much, James, for making this possible, making my first ever taste of Stagg bourbon possible. Super excited to dive in. Again, in case you're a little bit unfamiliar, this is a product of Buffalo Trace Distillery. It's usually MSRP around 70 bucks nowadays. I think age statement on Stagg is non-age stated, it's not disclosed, but it's thought to be somewhere in that like 7 to 9 year old range. In terms of mash bill, everything from Buffalo Trace is kept under wraps, but rumor has it that this is mash bill number 1. All that being said, the reputation overall is that this is super high proof, high octane whiskey. Lots of people love it and point to it as one of their, unicorn bottles that they're constantly trying to get. Again, I have never tasted it, not even at a bar. This is going to be my first ever experience with it. So let's dive in. On the nose, Stagg Jr, or Stagg, batch 18. Okay, very Buffalo Tracy to me. It's powerful, ethanol forward a little bit. Caramel, cinnamon, some vanilla, brown sugar for sure. A little bit of ethanol, like I said, for sure, coming through, actually a good amount. And then there is a fruity nature to this. I'm not exactly sure, some green apple maybe. But the most prominent fruit I'm getting is like a raspberry note. So sort of strong raspberry and brown sugar as my favorite. I mean, I love raspberries and I love brown sugar, so both of those being present is awesome. A little bit of oak, but I will say it's pretty ethanol forward, and there's a little bit of like a, I don't know, just pure acetone kind of note in here. A little astringent. All right, that is powerful. I think there's some great notes in there, maybe a little bit masked by the ethanol. We'll see how that transfers over to the palate. All right, everybody, first taste. Cheers. That's got a lot going on. It's sweet, very sweet. It's rich, spicy, a little bit tannic and drying even on the back end. All right, so let me walk you through some of the flavors. I definitely get that raspberry note. Wrapped around that is a little bit of honey as well on the front palate especially. Then it gets pretty spicy in the mid palate. Some brown sugar in the front palate, and that transitions to the mid palate, but then it adds in this like cinnamon note for sure. And then toward the back end, I'm getting a little bit more of that oak, a little bit more of maybe even a chocolate note, something along those lines. Just a little bit bitter, a little bit tannic on the back end. Came out swinging, came out punching for sure. Let's go in for a second sip on the palate and really kind of dig into some more flavors. Cheers. Yep. You can definitely feel the proof on this one. That one was dominated by cinnamon, that sip especially, pretty much from the mid palate all the way through to the finish. Front palate again starts out a little bit sweeter with some of that like raspberry and honey. I do think it goes darker and a little bit drying toward the back end. There is, just like a nice fruitiness, I think, that starts out with it, and then it gets super spicy. A little bit of that fruit sticks around, but it goes bitter, maybe some tobacco notes on the back end as well. Let's go back actually for this third sip now. Again, that was a big cinnamon spike there. And let's focus specifically now on the finish. Cheers, everybody. Nice. On that sip, the raspberry really came back up and was a lot more prominent. Then I got a lot more cherry actually. So both of those nice red juicy fruits coming through. A lot more brown sugar on the mid palate there. Cinnamon was a little bit more tamed down, so I could feel and taste and register a lot more of the flavors. But the finish is long. It's spicy for me. It's got that cinnamon, it's got that oak, maybe a touch of tobacco. And right now I'm getting a little bit of that raspberry lingering. I love the fruit notes I get in Buffalo Trace overall. I almost always get a cherry or a grape note. Really nice to see that kind of shift up and be a little bit maybe darker in terms of this raspberry note that I'm getting, which is nice. But I will say overall, there's a hefty amount of spice and a hefty amount of ethanol on this, even on the palate. Came it through on the nose. Let's just revisit that real quick here, now that it's had a little bit more time to open up. Okay, yeah, a little bit less ethanol now. A little bit more brown sugar and caramel. Maybe even a touch of like oaky, tobacco-y notes on the nose now too. Pretty nice nose. You know what? I'm actually gonna let this sit for about 10 more minutes. We'll cut to that and I'll give it one more sip because I think this one needs a little extra time. All right, we're back. I did originally give this about 10 minutes to open up before filming the video, but wanted to give it extra time because it does have extra punch. So let's dive back in one more time on the nose and the palate. So on the nose, yeah, definitely more caramel coming through now. Some raspberry still. Maybe a touch more chocolate. But there still is a little bit of an astringency. It's definitely tamed down. It's definitely opened up a little bit, but I think that astringency and that ethanol note is still there. All right, let's go into the palate one more time. Cheers. Oh yeah, That is by far the best sip. More brown sugar, more of that honey, more of that oak, much more of the raspberry wrapping through it all. The cinnamon and the ethanol punch in the middle tamed down, and I'm getting so many more flavors, and the finish feels so much sweeter now. That raspberry is still there. Again, a little bit of that oak, a little bit of that tobacco, but giving it that extra time really did help the palate there. And the nose got better too. So overall, a really, really nice experience. It definitely comes out swinging. I think for me, this is a good lesson of like, when you have super high proof stuff, maybe I'll start doing this more. I'll start tasting it, give it an extra time, tasting it again. We'll see. But with Stagg, I think it definitely deserved that second look, and I'm glad I did it because a lot more flavors have come through now on this particular batch. So really nice experience. Again, thanks James for making this possible. How would I rank or rate or evaluate Stagg overall in terms of things I've had? I mean, it's punchy, it's powerful, and it's got really nice raspberry, oaky, brown sugary notes. I think overall Buffalo Trace I'm pretty happy with most of the time, especially those fruit notes. And this has that. It has a fruit note that I absolutely love. So really nice batch. Again, maybe give it some extra time to open up is a good lesson here. Let me know in the comments below, have you guys tasted this batch of Stagg, batch 18? What did you think? How does this compare to other batches that maybe you've tasted? Because I have no real experience with those so far. Looking forward to maybe hunting down my own bottles of Stagg in the future, because I think it's worth the extra hunt, and you know, I would love to add one to my collection. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.